This podcast was made possible by Harbor Media Production Grants, HMPG.
Welcome to Substance Free 02043, brought to you by Hingham Cares. I'm Kristina Root, and I'm President and Program Director of Hingham Cares. Our mission is to reduce substance use among youth in Hingham, and to that end, we bring in educational programming and information into the community. Our guest today is Kathleen Mahoney, the Tobacco Compliance Officer for the South Shore. Welcome, Kathleen.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here. So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, educational background, that sort of thing.
I actually grew up here in Hingham. I won't mention the year that I graduated, but I went to Hingham High. I now currently live in Hanover with my husband and my youngest son. We have 3 adopted children together. Our oldest is Erica, she's 34. Then there's TJ, who's 29, and the youngest is Alex, he's 17. Actually, today is his birthday.
Oh, happy birthday, Alex.
Yes, and I received my bachelor's degree from Curry College in criminal justice.
What were you doing before becoming the Tobacco Compliance Officer?
So I worked for the Attorney General's office. I did consumer protection. I've also worked for a couple of district attorneys throughout Massachusetts doing. Actually, it was a bad check program, so that was a long time ago because we really don't have checks anymore.
Right.
I've done some misdemeanor intervention programs for district attorneys as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I've actually worked for Panera overseeing catering at one point, so I kind of run the gamut. But now I've been doing this currently for 5 years.
You are the Tobacco Compliance Officer for the towns of Hingham, Braintree, Halifax, Hanover, Norwell, Pembroke, Rockland, and Weymouth, correct?
Yes, correct.
And what specifically brought you into this particular line of work?
Well, what happened is I think, one, having young kids, I want to make sure that I protect not only mine, but the other kids. And I think the thing that really got me into this is, unfortunately, I watched my mother die from cancer, and it was all due to her smoking.
Oh.
So seeing that really hit home, and I found this job, I could actually make a difference, hopefully. If I could have one person stop smoking, then I'd be happy. So that's what brought me into this.
Can you tell us what it is that a tobacco compliance officer does?
There's a lot of things, but I'll start with Board of Health. So I work with all my boards of health, and what I do is I go out and I'll do inspections at the retail stores. So what that entails is I'll go in, see what kind of products they have, make sure they're all within the regulations and within the law. I'll make sure they have the current permits, make sure they're up to date, not only the town permits, but Department of Revenue. And then I'll go in and just talk to them, see what's going on, update them on the latest. So that's my Board of Health inspections. I do that at least once a year. And I have about 210 retailers.
Wow.
So I go out and do those. And then...
Are they, sorry to interrupt, are these surprise visits?
Yes, they are. So when they do the permit, they have to agree that I can come in at any time and do an inspection.
Okay.
So, yeah, they are a surprise. And then compliance checks, these are the ones that I'll bring kids that are under the age of 21 out to each of the retailers to possibly purchase a tobacco product. So since January 2022 till this September 1st, I've done approximately 379 compliance checks.
Wow. So
I will pick them up, I'll bring them out, we have a list of what we do. They go in, and usually I'll see what they're comfortable asking for. It might be Marlboro cigarettes, or it might be a vaping product, whatever it is, and they'll go in and ask for it. And then they'll come out, and whether they got the sale or not, and we fill everything out and go from there. In these 379 compliance checks that I did do, there were approximately 50 sales to my youth. So once that happens, I have to go out within 3 to 6 months and redo these checks again. I'm hoping to get no sales. That's our goal.
That's a pretty sizable percentage.
It is.
I can't do the math in my head just right now off the top of my head, but that's a lot more than I would have expected, to be honest.
Actually, we were kind of surprised, and it's not just the South Shore, it's all of Massachusetts. It has risen a bit. We're not quite sure why, but we're trying to really focus now on educating the retailers that, this is not right. You have to ID. There's actually a law on the books that you have to ID everybody that buys a tobacco product. So we're trying to go out and re-educate them to lower this percentage, because we don't want them to sell to any youth.
You have to be 21 or older in order to purchase tobacco products,
yes, correct. Yep. And I will say the 21 went into effect a couple of years ago, so.
It used to be 18?
Yes.
Okay. When these young people go into the retail establishments in an attempt to purchase something that they shouldn't be allowed to purchase, is that recorded? Are they allowed to bring some kind of recording device in?
No. It is not. They'll go in. We have a protocol they must follow. So they'll go in, they'll ask for the product. They don't carry their license with them. They just go in and ask for the product. I'm always there. And then when they come out, we take all the details down of what the clerk looked like, what product it was, how much it cost, but is not recorded.
So it's based on their testimony.
Yes. Education to the retailers. If there's a change in a regulation, whether it be in town of Hingham or town of Halifax, I'll go out and educate them on the new regulation change. Also, when the new law went into effect, I went out and educated them all about the new law and what is going on. The reason I do this is so they know what's going on, so there's no surprises. So we really want them to be educated on the new law, the regulations. So we're not out to hand out violations. We want these retailers to know what's going on so they can avoid selling to a person under 21.
And how do you find out about these changes in regulations from town to town?
That's a good question. So I will meet with the boards. I'll meet with the health directors and agents, and we'll discuss maybe possibility of changing the regulations. And then we'll meet with the boards. The boards will go over with the board exactly what regulations we're thinking of changing and why we're doing it. And then once the board votes on it and it goes into effect, I'll go out and educate the retailers.
So you must act almost as if you're kind of a liaison or an advisor in some capacity to other towns. So, for example, if one town comes up with a creative solution to something, then you have the ability to share that with those other towns within your jurisdiction.
Yes, correct. And I'll go in and tell them, hey, this town just did this and this is why. And I also have colleagues throughout Massachusetts that do this, so we often share different regulations and what we can do. Mm-hmm. I will do that with all towns because I think it's important to kind of be on the same page and same regulations. And as far as once we do educate, we change the regulations, then I'll go in and enforce the regulations to make sure that they are following them. For example, some towns have a cigar pricing regulation, so they can't sell a single cigar for lower than $2.90. I'll go in and make sure that, say, Hingham has it, and they're doing that. Weymouth might not have that. They do have it, but another town might not have it, so I have to make sure I know which regulation I'm enforcing.
Right.
But I make sure. And some of them have stores in different towns, so they kind of are questioning, why is this? And I explain that this is a town regulation, this is what we have to do. Mm-hmm. And some of them have, for example, blunt wrap regulations. That's a leaf that has nicotine. It's a tobacco leaf with nicotine in it, mm-hmm. and some towns don't want that. So I'll go into those specific towns and those retailers and, you know, if it's a new regulation, tell them about it. If I've been in there a couple times and I see they have it, then it might result in a fine, depending.
So you go into retail establishments that are licensed to sell these products?
Yes.
Do these retail establishments need to have a license in order to obtain these products? Or
yes. They first have to get one from the Department of Revenue, mm-hmm. and they'll have 3 from the Department of Revenue, depending on what they're selling. One for the cigarettes, one for the cigars, and one for the e-cigarettes. Okay. So they have to have all 3. So I do check them to make sure they have them. And then they can order the products. Say if it's a new store, they'll order the products. I'll come in, make sure they have the correct products on the shelf and ready to sell. And then once I sign off, then they'll get their permit from the town. It's usually how it works.
How are you able to get around to all of these towns and conduct all the work that you do? Do you have people who work for you, or are you directly responsible for all of this? I'm directly responsible. So it can be challenging, but I try to keep my schedule pretty tight, mm-hmm. and I try to stay on time and say, okay, the first quarter, let me get, say, 35 inspections done as far as Board of Health, and then 35 compliance checks. So I try to really stay on it. So no, nobody works for me except for the youth inspectors. Okay. And I currently have 2 right now, always looking for more if anybody wants to apply. And these youth inspectors do not do the inspections in the town that they live in. So where I have 8, I can shuffle them around. Ah, okay. Yeah, it's not fair to them to do that in the town they live in. So you've already talked about how you work pretty closely with the health directors in mm-hmm. the different towns that you work in and the boards of health. Could you describe that relationship in a little more detail? Do you show up to the monthly meetings? Do you do anything beyond what you've already described?
So what I do is I'd like to see the boards of health at least once a year, maybe more. That's just to say hi and check in. So often I'll ask if I can get on the agenda just to say hello and say this what I'm up to, this what I'm seeing in your town. Mm-hmm. Then if I see them also if there is a sale to a person under 21 or another violation. Sometimes there will be an appeal filed, and I'll have to go in for the hearing, explain what happened, and do my side. So they'll see me then. And then, obviously, as I said, when we want to change regulations, I'll go in and talk to them about what's going on, and this is why we want to do it. I am involved at the board on different occasions that they need me to be.
And when it comes to the number of violations and what the consequences are for those violations, is that a town-by-town type of thing, or is there a statewide
That is a
law?
good question. There is a statewide law that if there's a sale to a person under 21, the first violation is $1,000 in between 1 and 7 days of a suspension of the permit. The second one is $2,000 and then more days of suspension of permit. And the third one is $5,000 more days. The town can set how many days they want the permit suspended.
Okay.
They can also set what they want for a fine for a violation. Say, for example, if it was a cigar regulation violation, that they can set the dollar amount. I'm finding that a lot of towns now are just matching the state fines. So if it is a violation like that, they will hand out the $1,000. So it's town to town, and the board decides what the fine will be as far as the other violations. They have no say on the sale to a person under 21.
And then that money becomes a revenue stream for the town, correct?
Yeah, usually they put it into a general fund. It's, again, town to town, but it's usually put into a general fund.
And that's administered typically by the health agent within the town?
Yeah, they will put it down, and what they do once it goes, they, as I said, they do put it in general fund. I'm not exactly sure what town uses it for what, but it does go into a general fund.
Okay.
For example, like, it doesn't go into Board of Health. It goes into,
A general townwide fund?
yeah, exactly.
So after that third violation, what happens? Are they at risk of losing their permits?
Yes, they are. Again, it's town to town, but usually the fourth violation, they can pull the permit.
And is that, again, you just described that the amount of time is varies from town to town. So if it's 4 violations within a year and the town says, 6 months is the maximum for those violations, then there would be different consequences. I guess what I'm asking is, does the clock restart at any point?
It depends on town to town, but yes, it can restart. But some towns have it that fourth violation, your permit's gone, that's it.
Regardless of how much time has
Yep.
passed?
Yep.
Do the issues that you encounter vary from town to town?
Yes, it does. It really does. I don't know if it's the fact that some towns have more retailers than others, but it does vary. In the end, no matter what, the sale to a person under 21 can happen in any town. Again, it depends on the retailers, how many they have. I have found illegal products in some towns, more so than others. So it can vary.
And speaking of products, you have some products here with you today that are on the table in front of us. Can you describe what some of these are?
Yeah, so this is actually a jewel, and this is what really, I think, started back in 5 years ago. These were everywhere. And I actually have gone to some middle schools and high schools and talked to the principals, and they all thought it was a USB drive and has handed them back to the students, not knowing. So this is a flavored vape that is now illegal in Massachusetts. We banned flavors for the reason that the kids found them so easy to pick up, start, and then become addicted.
Right.
This is now what's called a clear disposable vape. I see a lot of these being sold. This is about between $20 and $30.
And when you say disposable, it's after you've finished using the cartridge, it just gets thrown out?
Yes. So this whole thing will get thrown out.
Are you finding those to be a trash problem? Are they on beaches and things like that?
I am finding them
In
everywhere.
parks?
Yeah. Like when I walk in the morning, I see them. I've had neighbors call me and tell me that there's a certain path that they're just completely littered with the disposables. So that's a concern.
Right.
As far as environment, that is a concern. We also have this one that, again, vaping, they say that they started to have people stop smoking, but this is geared, as far as I'm concerned, towards a kid. I don't see an adult carrying this around their neck. And then this final one, and this is the new Newport non-menthol, which I've brought to boards before, and they all look at it, and I showed you guys that it looks like a regular menthol cigarette.
Right.
So I think that's kind of deceiving to the consumer that used to smoke regular Newport menthol to have that up on the shelf. I've seen when I go into retailers that it consumes a lot of this shelf space now. So that is concerning. This is, the purple thing is an old tank version that they used to have way back when. Nowadays, a lot of these are, you don't see the big puff of smoke, so it's easier for whomever to smoke it wherever, whether it be in school, in the girls' room, boys' room.
Right.
So that's a concern too.
And it's odorless.
Yes.
So there's a little sticker here that you said shows the
percentage of 3%.
and that represents what?
The nicotine salt, the amount in it. So a regular retail store can sell up to 3%. A adults-only retail tobacco store can sell up to 5%. The more nicotine, the more addiction.
Right.
On that particular one, I picked it up and I noticed that the sticker was a little bit loose, and I scraped it off my fingernail, and underneath it revealed it's 5%. So I instructed my retailers to take it off the shelf.
So does that mean that they simply didn't want to correct the packaging, that there actually is a 3% in this box and they just wanted to avoid repackaging?
We don't know.
Okay.
Because even inside the package in there had 3%, and that peeled off too. So people are looking into that to see what is going on, but I said until I know for sure, I want them off the shelves.
And there is nobody really regulating that percentage, correct?
We're trying to, but no, there isn't. I mean, it would have to be sent to a lab to be tested, and right now I don't see that happening.
Right.
But maybe in the future it will, because these products are coming out left and right. Every time I go into a new retail, I see a new product, and some of them are up to 9,000. Well, this is 7,500 puffs. They go up to 9,000. So the way that I look at it is a pack of cigarettes contains about 200 milligrams of nicotine. One of the puffs, say maybe Crave, is 2,500 puffs, and that contains about 325 milligrams of nicotine. So in some of these, as I said, are 9,000. So a pack of cigarettes is 200 milligrams, a 2,000 is 325 milligrams, and a tin of Zyn, this is a nicotine pouch, that contains equivalent of 2.5 packs of cigarettes, the nicotine in it, just that. Now, this is a thing that really worries us, is 2.5 packs of Marlboro cigarettes cost about $32.50. And this one tin of Zyn, which is, again, equivalent to 2.5 packs of cigarettes, costs only about $4.49.
Wow.
And some local stores have run a promotion through September that $3.49 for 2 tins. So that's concerning.
Right.
And I know that these are selling a lot. I've talked to some of the retailers, and some of them are really honest and tell me that it's a really high seller.
Well, cost is such a deterrent to things like this. That's why you have, the black market, things that are off market. So if they can be made affordable and accessible, you've got a win-win.
Right.
So we've been talking about the regulation of tobacco products. Do you do any regulation of marijuana products as well? Not
yet, no. That's another department that does that. The only thing that I will regulate as far as that is if there is a flavored vape that has THC or Delta 8, Delta 9, those are illegal. We'll take 8 and 10 are illegal. If it's a flavored vape, and we will regulate on that because that falls under our wheelhouse. Everything else goes to the cannabis control and whatnot.
The industry has evolved so much over the years, as you've just pointed out, so many things for parents to be on the lookout for. Could you describe some of the things that you've seen in your time in this position, trends that have come and gone, things that have evolved?
There's so much that has really evolved since I took this position 5 years ago.
And that's not a very long amount of time.
No,
either.
It isn't. As I said, like Juul was out then. Now it's all these other different vapes and disposables in the nicotine pouches, and I just see so many every single day that it's hard to keep up with. I know the FDA is cracking down on a lot of these companies that haven't gotten the correct documents in, so that's a good thing. But every day there's so much coming out. I have stuff in here that I can show you if you want me to show you now that is geared towards the kids, which The FDA just came out warning these retailers, but for example, this is an e-cigarette and that's a cartoon. Again, the toy and the e-cigarette. This is frightful, and I send this out to the school resource officers. I send them out to the boards. I said, make sure you send it out. This is a highlighter vape, and that's a regular highlighter. They even have Dunkin' Donuts, vape and donuts, Starbucks. So that stuff, every day something else is coming out. When I go into an adult-only retail tobacco store, I really sit there and talk to them to see what the latest is. Mm-hmm. And they do have a lot of information for me. There is a lot of new disposable vapes that are coming out every day.
So they're playing pretty fast and loose with trademark violations with some of this stuff.
Yes, and I've had other stuff that I know that the companies finally went after them because it looked like Doritos or whatnot. Mm-hmm. So they will, I think, eventually go after them. But right now, I just want the parents to be aware that these products are out there geared towards kids, and just to be on the lookout.
I mean, you really have to look pretty hard. Some of those are so authentic looking,
right,
that they could easily pass for what the original is.
Yeah, that you think it's a toy, and no, it isn't. So.
Right. And do you think the purpose of that is to appeal to a younger audience, or do you think the purpose of that is to allow it to be camouflaged?
I think it's to appeal to a younger audience.
Okay.
These tobacco companies spend billions of dollars on this advertisement and all these products, so it is scary at times. They've been known to say that we want to get our future customer young, that way we have a customer for life.
We know from science tells us that the brain is not fully developed until the age of 25. The earlier you start using a substance, the more likely you are to become addicted to that substance. So they're familiar with brain science and familiar with teen habits and risky behavior and that sort of thing, and they're capitalizing on that, which is unfortunate.
You know, nicotine addiction is an extremely hard addiction to quit.
Yes.
And it can lead to other addictions, so this is another reason why I'm out here.
Right.
You know, let parents know that, you know, as I don't know if I said it earlier, but when it first came out, vaping, the principal of one high school that I went to would see the parents dropping the kids off vaping with them, because at that point they were told that it was water vapor and it was harmless.
Right.
So
right. There was so much misinformation early on. It was marketed as a healthier alternative to cigarettes, and it's almost a less healthy version of nicotine ingestion. One thing that I remember hearing in a workshop early on several years ago when vaping first, became an issue, this woman said, when you think of how you spray water on your hair, eventually that water evaporates and there's nothing left on your hair. She said, that's not how a vape works. She said, a vape is almost like inhaling hairspray. You spray hairspray on your hair, a sticky residue is left over, and that's what you're inhaling into your lungs. And that's the piece that people didn't fully understand.
Right.
I've actually spoken with some young people who just happened to be on the beach while my husband and I were also on the beach vacationing, and they were vaping. And I said, just want to let you guys know that that's probably one of the most dangerous things that you can be doing to your body. Your lungs were not designed to manage that. And I gave them that illustration of how you're inhaling basically a chemical substance. They had no idea.
Right.
And yet they talked about how difficult it was. They kind of knew that it wasn't a good thing to be doing, and these are kids, like college age kids. Yeah. But how difficult it was for them to stop vaping. How highly addictive this product is. It's really incredible.
Yes, it is. And
like you said, it was designed to be that way.
Yep. And I've heard from other parents as well that their child's addicted, what do I do? And again, college age, some of them. I know one child lost his captainship because he got caught vaping in school. Mm-hmm. And then after that, I talked to the mom a couple of years later, he was still vaping, he's still addicted. It affected how he performed on the ice. He slowed down a lot because his lungs were slowing down. He couldn't breathe the way he's supposed to. So yeah, it is scary. And I don't think that they know all the facts yet. I think there's still more to come out. But yes, it is a dangerous chemical that you're breathing into your lungs.
And really, just like anything, prevention is the best medicine.
Right.
Not even starting. So without naming names, or even town names, can you share some of the more egregious violations that you've encountered?
Again, I think the thing that disturbs me was the 50 sales to a child under 21. But other things that I've encountered is I've gone into some stores more than once and found illegal products, such as flavored vapes. I've found stores that cannot sell 5%, selling 5%. Unfortunately, I had one store that had a very large amount of illegal products that were in there. So it's still out there. We're still looking, but there is illegal products out there that are being sold.
And what do these store owners say when you confront them with this information?
Well, they will get a fine, and I've actually had one retailer say, we don't care about the fine, we'll pay the fine. We don't want to lose a permit for 5 days.
And I would imagine the fine is probably not as much of it doesn't take as much of an economic toll as not being able to sell those products.
Right. So that's their main concern is the suspension of their permit.
So those are certainly challenges that you face in your line of work. Are there any other particular challenges that you face?
Trying to get the laws changed. These laws are here to protect our youth, so trying to get them changed. And I have to say that Massachusetts is ahead of a lot of states, which is great. But the tobacco, as I said earlier, tobacco industry spends billions of dollars on research, so they're always coming up with new ways to addict young people, higher nicotine content, appealing devices, the packaging, cheaper products, for example, the Zyn that the kids can afford, highly addictive nicotine salts. The earlier they hook a person, the longer they're going to have a customer. So that's challenging seeing these companies go in and do this. And, tobacco use is the leading cause of preventable death in the U.S. Every year, 460,000 Americans die prematurely from smoking. So this is something that every day it's a challenge of how can we stop this? How can we get it to be that these kids don't get it? Maybe get help for other people that are smoking or vaping, whatever it is. But that's a challenge. But I have to say Massachusetts is ahead. I've gone to other states and talked to other people like, oh, you're from Massachusetts? You guys are doing great. Banning the flavors was great. Banning menthol was great. So we're getting there, but we still have a ways to go, unfortunately.
And anytime a new substance comes out or some new contraption or new device or what have you, that always requires new legislation, new regulations,
Yes.
and that the wheels of bureaucracy can move a little bit slowly in that regard, not for any fault other than it's a time-consuming process.
It is.
What are some accomplishments that you're most proud of?
Well, as I said, when I started 5 years ago, since then we've banned the flavored vapes. That was huge, because it was attracted to young kids. Moving the minimum age from 18 up to 21 was huge, and then banning menthol. But this work started over 2 decades ago when we started the smoke-free workplace, that we couldn't smoke in restaurants anymore, couldn't smoke in bars, can't smoke in theaters. We also took on the initiative that pharmacy can't sell cigarettes anymore because they're treating cancer in the back and selling tobacco in the front.
Right.
As I said, Massachusetts has done a lot. We have a ways to go, but we're working on it. So I'm hoping in the future we can even have better regulations and laws to prevent any kids from starting to smoke. But in the 5 years, we've done a lot, and I really like to see that.
So what types of things would you like to see in the future?
I would like to see menthol be banned across everywhere, because if it's across everywhere, the United States, it's easier for us to enforce. I'd like to see more of a crackdown on some of these devices. Maybe I would like to see put a cap on how many puffs per disposable, so they're not smoking up to 12 packs in one $9,000 puff vape. So we have a lot of things that we're looking at and trying to do. Department of Public Health, everybody working together, we're hoping to make more laws and more changes.
How many other tobacco compliance officers are there in Massachusetts?
It depends. I'd say there's about 20. We're funded through a grant, so not every single town. There's 351 boards of health in Massachusetts. Not everyone has a compliance officer.
Okay.
But if there's towns that do not have one and they need somebody to do inspections, we'll help out other towns as well. If they do not have someone, the boards of health will go out and do the inspections as well.
Is there anything in particular that you would like business owners who sell tobacco and tobacco-related products to know? What's your sort of message to that industry?
That it's very, very important not to sell to underage youth, because the nicotine is, as I said, one of the hardest addictions to quit. And as we discussed earlier, their brains are not fully developed yet. So it's so important to have in place that they ID everybody, that their clerks and all the employees are, trained to make sure that you ID everybody. Nicotine products say also they have a much higher content of nicotine in there. So it's really important that we keep them out of the hands of the youth. And that's why I do what I do. And I go in there and educate them. But it's really important. Don't sell to anybody under 21.
So it's almost as though the nicotine distribution process has been altered such that we don't associate any of these products with cigarettes, even though they're simply another nicotine device.
Right. I mean, combustible, we had the percentage of people not smoking them. It was looking fantastic. It was low. And then these came on the market. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's all, cigarettes are not sold nearly as much, I think, as these are now.
Right. And I think kids would say, oh, smoking is bad for you. But they wouldn't say vaping is bad for you necessarily. Hopefully we're educating them,
right.
and
you're
we're
right.
affecting some change.
That's exactly what they're thinking. Oh, I wouldn't smoke cigarettes. They smell. They're gross. That's awful.
Right.
But then they have a disposable vape in their hand. I'm like,
right.
So they need to be educated more. Absolutely.
Do you or some other entity provide training and education to retail establishments?
I provide the education to the retailers. I'll go in and, as I said, discuss all the regulations, what expected, the law. I also bring in to retailers, whether it's a new retailer or when these came out to all my current retailers, it's a postcard and it has a QR code. It's from the Department of Public Health, mm-hmm. and I'll give that to them, and it has a video of how to sell tobacco products. It's a training video.
How to sell it responsibly.
Exactly. So I do hand out those. So I will educate them and hand out those. And if they have any questions, I've had many retailers call me and say, hey, Kathleen, I have a new product. Can you come and check it out? Is it okay for me to sell?
That's great.
So, yeah, I try to have a good rapport with them so they can call me and ask me, and I can go in and say, yep, this you can. Oh, no, this one you can't, and this is why. So it's very important to have that open communication with them.
You referenced before that you're not in this business, because you want to hand out fines. You want to keep people safe and healthy.
Yep.
And one would assume that somebody who's a shop owner would feel the same way. So
right.
It's great to have that collaborative relationship.
It is.
What types of substances are people vaping? What are they using these devices for?
Some of these devices can be filled with numerous things. It can be filled with the liquid vape. It can also be filled with liquid marijuana. So they can vape just about anything, which is scary because I've heard of some of these vapes could contain fentanyl. So it is scary what they can put in there. I know that they have different vapes that have, as I said before, Delta 9 that's in there that they're vaping. So it's all sorts of products that they can vape.
And Delta 9 is a form of cannabis.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what's scary is when these first came out, you could smell the vaping. Mm-hmm. And as I said, you could see the puffs. Now you can't.
Right.
And even before that, they used to, on different TikToks, do stealth. So you could vape in class and blow it down your sleeve and the teacher wouldn't know.
Right.
And I always say it's whack-a-mole. You just get rid of one and another one comes up. And that's our constant game of playing against the tobacco industry is whack-a-mole. They're going to come up with something else.
We did a survey at the high school during lunch period, and I forget how many kids we surveyed. I think it was just under 200. And it was a very simple question. What keeps you from using substances? What prevents you from using substances? Meaning what psychologically prevents you? And on the reverse side, it was a multiple choice question. The reverse side, it was, I don't want my parents to be upset with me. I'm afraid of how my friends will look at me. I don't want to lose a club or a sport.
Yeah.
I want to be healthy. There were 8, I think, options in total. Far and away, the answer was, I want to be healthy. Wow. I mean, I get goosebumps still when I think about it. Kids have, they risk being, arrested. They risk getting into a car accident. They risk, losing a club team or a sport. But fundamentally, they're concerned about their health. Like, those things don't even matter. They want healthy lives currently, and they want healthy futures.
That's good to know.
So to the extent that we can message about the health component
right.
and the health risk, I think that really resonates with kids.
I agree. I know that there was some marketing, I don't even know what I want to call it, but they they would send out to kids, like Truth Initiative, I think it was little blips of commercials. It was on social media, and would show the effects that it's not healthy to do this. And it showed that it really helped a lot because kids, as you said, paid attention because they want to be healthy. And the more they know about the dangers, I think the better off it will be, getting the word out there. These are dangerous products. It's going to harm you.
Absolutely. And it's kind of interesting that the industry marketed these as a healthier alternative to cigarettes. So that concept of health is one that everybody latches onto.
Hopefully the kids will learn and we'll get the word out. And I'm glad that you guys are doing those surveys in school. They're extremely important.
What advice would you have for parents on how to keep their children safe around substances? And I use that term broadly, but we're talking specifically about tobacco products right now. What would you say to parents?
Be patient and ready to listen. Again, having 3 kids and going through the teenage years. Have a conversation, not to deliver judgment or lecture. Avoid any criticism. Encourage an open dialogue. When we were kids once and our parents would lecture us, I'd go in one ear, out the other, just try to have a dialogue. I know with my 17 today, driving in the car, trying to have a conversation with them, and he'll kind of open up. There's no perfect time to talk. Mention something that you heard about substances, maybe in a passing conversation, try to get them to listen and talk. Consider, when you're talking, it's a learning opportunity. Both of you to concede that you don't know all the answers. And that's a perfect thing. If my son or my kids, when they're younger, ask me something, if I don't know, I'll be honest, I don't know. Let's go find that out together.
Right.
Ask what your child thinks. Just show some, curiosity. What do you think? Do you know any kids that are doing this? And if they say yes, perfect opportunity to have a conversation with them. Be open and honest. Be truthful about what you know, but also what you don't know. That's very important. Biggest thing is never stop having these conversations. Whenever you can, bring it up. They might think you're a pain, but that's okay. Keep having the conversations with them. It's very important about all substances.
And what about kids? What would you say to kids about how to stay safe and healthy around substances, specifically these types of substances?
Right. Well, you and I talked earlier that they don't know how dangerous these are. They need to learn the information. Many times they think that, everyone's doing it, but the research shows that no, not everyone's doing it. So, and if they see maybe a friend doing it, then talk to that friend. Let that friend know that, no, this is not cool. Let's not do this. Educate themselves on the risks, the dangers, as we said, what's in them and what they can do to their bodies. They're not aware of that. Some of these kids, if they find out what it can harm them, especially athletes, when it slows them down, their performance, they really need to do some research and figure out how dangerous these products are. Find alternatives to substances, schoolwork, clubs at high school, working, that also helps. Maybe different hobbies, get them away from this, and even if they're smoking, maybe quitting, that will help them quit easier. Never hesitate to ask for help. There's always help out there. We have quitting lines that are up there through Truth Initiative. We have Ditch the Vape that they can text to 88709, My Life, My Quit. We have so much out there that's available now that is great, that they can get the help. So I'm hoping that they will. I know that they find a lot of times the texting helps. We have live texting that coaches can text the kids. Okay. So that's great. There's also Not For Me. It's a web-based program that is free for 6 weeks, and there's 8 sessions in that program. So I'll send you that information as well.
Perfect.
So there are resources out there.
That's great. We have a resources page on our website, so I'll be sure
perfect.
to add those.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen, for being our guest today. This has been a really informative conversation, and I appreciate the work that you do.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I think it's really important to keep having these conversations, and anything that I can do, let me know.
Thank you for joining us today, and thank you to Kathleen Mahoney for being our special guest. You've been listening to Substance Free 02043, brought to you by Hingham Cares. I'm your host, Kristen Root, and I hope that you will join us again. For more info or to get involved, go to hinghamcares.org.
This podcast was made possible by Harbor Media Production Grants, HMPG. This podcast was made possible by Harbor Media Production Grants, HMPG.